Okay, how you doing?
Hey, this is Andy here with Libertarian Revolution, and today I'm in Austin, Texas, and I've got a very interesting guest with me today. It's somebody that I actually met here in Austin, Texas back in 2014 during the 2004 rather, during the Libertarian Party petition drive to regain ballot access for the Libertarian Party of Texas. My guest here is a longtime Libertarian Party member and a longtime ballot access petitioner for the Libertarian Party, and he's also worked on ballot initiatives and referendums and other petitions around the country for a long time. His name is Roger Pope. Okay, so Roger, tell us, how did you get started as a Libertarian? And what year?
I was 2000.
Could you speak up?
Yeah, 2000 and no, it was 1976.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a year that I was deciding, what I wanted to do as far as who I wanted to vote for, and it was just right towards the end of the Vietnam War. I guess it was after the Vietnam War, and I had a lot to think about.
And how did you discover libertarianism and the Libertarian Party specifically?
Well, I think basically I've always been a libertarian in my philosophy.
So you were kind of a natural.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, where did you first hear the word libertarian?
Well, actually it was at a Libertarian Party convention.
What got you to go to a Libertarian Party convention?
I'm trying to remember.
Was it the presidential campaign of Roger McBride?
No, it was right after that. I think that I ended up doing that. It was the 1976. No, the next presidential campaign was in
1980. That would have been Ed Clark.
Ed Clark, yeah.
But did you know about it But you knew about it in 1976.
Yes.
Did you petition in 1976?
No.
Okay. When did you work your first petition drive? Would it have been 78?
Probably, yes.
And you started out as a volunteer, is that correct?
Yes.
And
volunteered in petitioning with a man named Ken Prazak.
And this was in which state?
Illinois.
And you're originally from Illinois?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And how many volunteer petition drives did you work before you started working as a paid petitioner?
Gosh, I was working in Illinois, and then I moved to California, and I worked petition drives there throughout the 80s. I ran for Congress, and then ran for Congress a second time in the 1990s. And I was doing petition drives for myself and for other people. And
so when you came out to California, what year was that? Would have been 1980 maybe?
Yeah, around. It was a little after. Yeah,
okay.
Just a little.
Did you work? I know there was a big Libertarian Party voter registration drive that started sometime maybe around 1979, 80, where they had to get a certain number of voter registrations in order to qualify as a party in California.
With that.
Oh, you didn't work on that?
That was already done by the time I got there. So.
Okay. Did you ever work any voter registrations for the Libertarian Party in California?
Didn't need to. It was a permanent ballot.
What was your first paid petition drive then?
I was working paid petitions. I did a little bit before I came to California.
Would that have been in Illinois?
Illinois.
For the Libertarian Party? Okay.
Yeah.
Was that in 1980? You think?
Yeah, it could have been.
Now, how many volunteer signatures do you think you?
Yeah, the 4 years.
How many volunteer signatures do you think you collected before you worked your first paid petition drive?
It seems like thousands every time.
Thousands and thousands? Do you have a ballpark estimate? Like 20,000?
No.
Okay, but it was thousands of volunteer signatures.
Could have been 20 to 40. Actually.
Now, were you like the top volunteer signature gatherer in Illinois?
Ken Prazak and I both were like neck and neck.
So Ken Prazak was a hell of an activist also.
Oh, he still is.
Yeah, do you still talk to Ken Prazak?
Occasionally. I haven't talked to him in a while, but yeah, he has his own, I don't know if it's a TV show or radio show, yeah.
Okay, do you know if it's still on?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Freedom Rings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, when did you work your first paid petition drive for the Libertarian Party?
Well, Ken and I both did. We both agreed that since we were gathering most of the signatures, and including signatures that other people had said that they were going to collect that they never did.
They never did. You got that, folks listening?
Yeah.
A lot of you out there, a lot of people say they're going to collect signatures and then never actually do it.
Well, they try,
Or they fail.
and they fail. A lot of them do fail, and the thing is that it's very unusual to have a person who can collect signatures and then isn't going to back away and say, "Oh gosh, I don't know, I'm scared, can't handle all the rejection. There's too many people saying no to me. I'm getting kicked out of places when I want to collect signatures that they won't let me collect signatures. Even the guy at the local grocery store that your mom used to shop at kicks you out and says you can't collect signatures."
Yeah, and as you know, some people out there may not be aware of, there's a real crackdown on free speech in this country. And would you say that things have gotten worse in terms of the crackdown on free speech and your ability
in
to
some ways, yes,
petition
and in
for
some
the
ways,
government?
actually, it's gotten better, but I would say that we haven't won a lot of the battles, and now that we know that we haven't won them, we know that we're not going to be able to. One of the big battles we never won was against the U.S. Post.
Oh, yeah. Now, at one time, you could petition at all the post offices. Is that right? Like back in the 80s or something?
People did. Yeah, people
yeah,
did
but
all
then
the
there
time.
was some point that I heard, I think it was in the 90s, maybe early 90s, where the post office basically just decided, hey, we're going to just ban petitioning
That's
at
right.
all the post offices. And this is a government monopoly.
Of course.
And now I know that's been litigated. I believe it was the Initiative and Referendum Institute filed a lawsuit about this. And the courts have ruled that you can petition at a post office if the door of the post office is directly off of a city sidewalk. But if it has an interior sidewalk with a parking lot, you cannot.
That's the federal government.
Yeah. Now, of course, as we know, the U.S. Constitution says that we're supposed to have a right to free speech and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So that seems contrary to what the U.S. Constitution says, and but basically,
the Supreme Court ruled against us.
I'm not sure if that went to the Supreme Court or not. I don't know if that. I have to look that up.
I heard that it was the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I don't think it. I don't
US.
think. Yeah, I'm not. I'll have to look into that, but I actually don't think this case actually made it to the Supreme Court. I could be wrong. I'll look into it later. But anyway, the case I think we're talking about is Initiative and Referendum Institute versus U.S. Postal Service. So anyway, right now, out of all the post offices in the country, the only ones you can collect signatures out of without being run out are the ones that are directly off of city sidewalks. So that basically eliminates probably about 95% of the post offices.
Right.
There's a few here and there.
Time,
yeah.
And in Oklahoma, they had been kicked off by the local police. Okay, both county and local township. Okay, and then I said, okay, yeah, what's the thing here? We won in court. So
Was this a city sidewalk post office?
No.
Oh, it wasn't a city.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
But the thing is that the postmaster general of that particular post office wanted to kick me off, and he was going to, except that we were very, very far away from Oklahoma City, where he could get federal marshals to come after me. All right, and we had already beaten them, and so when he went to call the county sheriff and the local township sheriff, they wouldn't come. They said he already beat us in court, and so he has a constitutional right to be there. Unless you have somebody else who will get him. And then he said to me, I can call the federal marshals and they'll come, but it's going to take 2 or 3 hours. I said, well, that gives me 2 or 3 hours to petition. So I'm going to continue to petition until they get here, and then I'm leaving.
Yeah. So did they ever arrive?
Yeah, and I had to leave.
Wow. And this wasn't that during like around 2011 or 2012?
Could have been about.
So anyway, now you talked about you moved out to California. Was that in the early 80s?
Yes, and then I stayed there through the 80s.
Okay, but so you had worked your first petition drive though, you'd been doing a volunteer petitioner for the Libertarian Party, and then you worked your first paid petition drive. Was that 78 or 80 for the Libertarian Party in Illinois? Was that was where you started as a paid signature gatherer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so by the time you got to
No,
California,
actually, I think. Well, I did do. That was the first time. Yeah.
did you work any other states as a paid signature gatherer for the Libertarian Party?
California.
Oh, so California, and then
I did
and then once you got out to California, when you moved there in the early '80s, did you work
I did
on
a lot
any?
of volunteer work there too.
Oh, okay.
It was mainly stuffing envelopes and.
Weren't you chair of like a county affiliate for the LP?
Yeah, for the Sacramento
County.
Sacramento
Do you remember
County.
what years you were chair of the Sacramento County
Gosh,
LP?
I can't remember. I worked for them for a long time with Jim McLaren, who was he was before I was, and then there was another guy that was there after Jim McLaren, which he wasn't very effective, and then I took over.
Okay,
after he moved.
and so you ran for office there too. You say you ran for Congress?
U.S. Congress in the 4th Congressional District.
Did you ever run for anything else?
No.
Okay, when did you while you were living in California, this is in the 80s, did you work on any like ballot initiatives or referendums or anything like that?
No.
Okay. When did you start getting into working on ballot initiatives and referendums?
Oh, geez, I can't remember that. That was
Would have been the 90s?
Probably the 90s.
Do you remember what your
I ran
first
for
one was?
Congress again in the 90s
Okay.
in Michigan.
Did you? Oh, you moved to Michigan. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, Michigan. I ran against a guy named John Dingell. You know who he is?
I've heard the name.
Well, John Dingell, he took over the congressional district that belonged to his father, and his father was in that district until his 90s, and then he stayed until his 90s, and now his daughter is taking it over in Wayne County. Okay. Now this guy. It was kind of interesting. He got reelected every year by buying cheese and then sending it to California in trucks and trains, and then having it sent off the coast and dumped in the ocean so that he could get reelected.
Huh. Was that keeping the cheese prices up or something like that?
Well, that was pretty much the idea, because it was the farm lobby that kept him in Congress.
Okay.
And
okay.
it still is, pretty much where he got his money and his time and all that. Now, I remember being in California before, and they had a thing called, it was Free the Cheese, because they wanted to give the cheese to the poor for welfare and all that. And they said no.
So that's where the government cheese expression comes from.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they free the cheese, and so they were going to let the people have the cheese, but then they would have had to package it, and it would cost too much money to package it. So they just keep dumping cheese in the ocean, which is feeding the fish.
I don't know if it's the healthiest diet, but for the fish. But anyway,
they got fat. And then
I'm sorry.
there was a guy who used to donate a lot of money to the party, and I went and traveled with him to Central America, and met his friends.
Can you divulge his name?
Yes, it's Leonard Duck.
Okay.
Okay, and he had a good friend. In fact, he knew Ronald Reagan real well.
Okay.
And
Ronald Reagan's not a libertarian, or was not a libertarian,
no,
just in case anybody's wondering.
No, yeah, he's not,
Yeah.
and wasn't. But we went there, and he kept telling me about what a beautiful country it was. And when we got there, I found out he knew some guy named Otto Guevara.
Ah.
Okay.
Movimiento Libertario.
Movimiento de Libertario. Yes. And
that's a libertarian party in Costa Rica for our
and
viewers
Otto
out
and him
there.
knew each other real well. So
Now, didn't Otto run for president of Puerto Rico or something?
no,
at some point?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. I meant Costa Rica.
He
Yeah.
did. And he was a kind of an interesting character, and they kept printing all this colones, which is the money that they have there, to fake colones. And
So when did you meet Otto?
it was back in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now
That was before the Movimiento de Libertario.
Oh, before they started the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
Oh, just for our viewers out there, we're standing in front of a place called Dan's Burgers, which is a local burger joint in Austin, Texas. They got really good burgers, and Roger and I just ate there. So anyway, but back to the questions here. So you worked your first ballot initiative. Do you think do you remember what state it was in?
Oh, the first ballot initiative. Oh, initiative.
Yeah, initiative or referendum.
I'm trying to think about that.
Well, could it have been, I'm just going to take a guess here, could it have been term limits back in the 90s?
Yeah, could have been.
Because that was a big issue back then.
I was working a lot of term limits.
Did you know Paul Jacob back in the day?
Paul Jacob. Yeah, I worked in Chicago. Yeah, that was it.
When they did term limits in Illinois back in the 90s?
Illinois, yeah.
Did you work term limits in any other states?
Paul Jacob, yeah, that was the guy I worked for a lot.
Yeah.
And
U.S. term limits.
Yeah, and I went to a lot of states where we did that, and a whole lot of other things. But yeah, term limits is a good thing, and I think that we need right now to have initiatives in every state in the union. We only have 26 states that have term limits.
Yeah, here's my view on ballot initiative and referendum, and that is that it's kind of a tool that the public can use against the power of the legislative bodies. And also I would include recall in that. A recall is your ability to do a petition to get an elected official removed from office. So I see it as a check and balance against the power of legislative bodies. Now I will say just as that I don't think you should be able to do a ballot initiative, that violates people's rights, that violates the Bill of Rights. And I think that the courts should throw that out. But in terms of other issues, though, yes, I think that the initiative and referendum process and recall process is something that that should be available at really all levels of government to as a check and balance against the power of legislative bodies. But anyway, now you told me earlier in discussion today that the last time you petitioned for the Libertarian Party was in 2012, and you're not really traveling petitioning as much as you used to, but you still come out and do it every once in a while,
right?
Working initiatives and referendums, local issues. Now I understand a couple years ago, 2016, you were in Arkansas, and you got in a little bit of legal trouble there. So what was this heinous crime you committed in Arkansas?
Right. Well, I was actually charged with trespass.
Were you also charged with disorderly conduct or resisting arrest?
No,
just trespass.
Yeah,
and where were you?
Just trespass. It was criminal trespass.
Okay.
So I was a criminal, and I was trespassing.
And
according to the
where were you trespassing? And what were?
I was trespassing in the middle of the day. It wasn't at night. It wasn't like I broke in, to this. I guess
government office.
It was a government office, but it was
the DMV.
It was during the day.
Right? They call it Arkansas Revenue. In Arkansas,
Arkansas Revenue,
what a lot of people around the country would call the Department of Motor Vehicles, where you go to get your driver's license and license plate.
Yeah.
In Arkansas, they call it Arkansas Revenue, which I think is kind of funny because that's what they're doing. They're generating revenue from their vehicle extortion. Their vehicle extortion.
Exactly.
But so you were in front of a government office, and what were you doing there? I mean, you must have been doing something wrong, right?
I was collecting signatures.
And what were you collecting signatures for?
Well, there was a couple of things there. One of them was medical marijuana, and the other one was for a casino.
Casino gaming. So these were ballot initiatives, which they have in the Arkansas state constitution.
They already
so
have
you're
now,
standing out there asking people to sign these petitions, and then what happened? Because now I can tell you, folks who's watching this video, I have petitioned in Arkansas multiple times myself. Now, I was not there during this particular drive when this thing happened to Roger, but I have personally petitioned in Arkansas in front of the same DMV known as Arkansas Revenue in Little Rock, and I worked that same thing multiple times.
The guy's name who arrested?
Yeah. Or the DMV worker.
The DMV.
He was like the vice president.
He was the vice president, and then later, after they had to throw it out because they
what was his name? He had a name that was very
Walter Anger.
Walter Anger.
Yes.
That's a very appropriate name.
Very angry man.
And just before we get to, I had a nasty confrontation with this guy as well, and his last name was very appropriate to his personality. But anyway, so you're out there collecting signatures, which is a totally legal activity in front of a government building, which is owned by the taxpayers.
Criminal, trespass. Now,
and didn't they cuff?
It's not like I broke in the middle of the night. It's like I wasn't trespassing. And I wasn't doing anything criminal. Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, it's supposed to be legal. The courts have actually already ruled that it's illegal to ask people to sign petitions in front of state and local government buildings that are open to the public. And in fact, they've even specifically mentioned Department of Vehicles in that. I know that there just one court case that I know of, which I actually testified in the form of a written deposition, was out of Nebraska, and it was called Groan versus Sang. And one of the things I testified about was being kicked out of the Department of Motor Vehicle for collecting petition signatures. And this was settled in the Federal Circuit Court, and Arkansas is in the same Federal Circuit Court as Nebraska.
Exactly.
So this was a totally legal activity. This guy, so he calls the cops on you, tells you can't be there, and then didn't they handcuff you and cuffed you?
Well, they didn't handcuff me, but they arrested me. They wanted to, and they brought me up to.
They brought you up to the station.
No, first they brought me up to the car on the hood of the car,
and they patted you down like you were a criminal.
Yeah, and I had my arms up against it and the whole bit, and patted me down. But I said, look, I'm going to go peacefully. So why don't we just get in the car and we'll go there? And
so they drove you to the police station.
Yeah, and I had to sit in the police station for about half a day.
Wow. So you were basically, and then they released you?
And then they released.
So it was a catch and release. But then you had to come back for some court appearance or something, and then
and then they had to drop the.
Now, there was an attorney with the campaign. You were telling me. We talked about this beforehand.
And that was paid for by the people that I was working for.
Okay, well that's good because they usually don't even do that. They usually just hang you out to dry. But wasn't there an issue where they told you didn't have to come back for court, and then so you didn't think you had to go back,
Exactly.
and then you applied to be an Uber driver, and then
I couldn't do it because I didn't pass their test.
They had a warrant for you.
Yeah,
from a false petitioning arrest in Arkansas because you missed a court appearance that they never told you that you didn't even know you had to go to.
Right, but because the attorney had already called them and told them that and sent a deposition to say that I didn't have to be there.
Okay, so you had this so then you did end up going back to Arkansas though a few months later.
Right.
And then can you tell us what happened in court?
Well, what happened was the attorney went into the back room with the judge, and they all decided that there was nothing there for them to be having me arrested for in the first place.
Yeah, so it was a false arrest.
All charges.
They dropped all the charges. Okay, that's so the whole case was thrown out.
And I did talk to Walter Anger, who happened to be there, and he thanked me so very, very much because he was no longer vice president; he was president.
Yeah, so he was trying. Yeah, he wanted to be So
now he became president. They rewarded him because, of course, there was people in the legislature that didn't want the initiative on to win on the ballot.
They didn't want either of them on the ballot. Well, there's people in government who are very hostile to anyone who's basically doing any kind of petition. Now, I can tell you, I've petitioned Arkansas several times myself, and about 2 months after you were there, getting the case thrown out with the
well, they still have dry counties all over.
But getting the just
drink alcohol and
you can drink alcohol, but you just can't buy it there.
You can't buy it.
But anyway, now just so this problem is not just in Arkansas though. This is kind of a national problem, and we have this problem pretty much in every state in the country. Now, some states are more likely, and that is, I'm talking about crackdown on First Amendment, hostility
our government has more people in jail than any country in the world today.
Yeah. Okay. And a large percentage of those people are in there for victimless crimes. Things that wouldn't be crimes if we had a libertarian society.
Yeah, wouldn't be considered.
And then there's also people who are falsely arrested for
nobody's violating anybody's rights.
Yeah. There's also people who were maybe arrested on something that would be a legitimate crime, but they didn't actually do it either. So, out of all the people that are in jail and prison, and I don't have the exact figures on me, but it could be that maybe half or maybe a little over half are people that really shouldn't even be in there at all.
Right.
Could be that maybe only 40% of them. Yeah.
Right now, there's a whole bunch of people coming out of Honduras and Nicaragua.
All right. I didn't want to.